Just wait. Boom. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning into a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this afternoon. We have a magnificent guest with us today, one who is going to give us some incredible information as well as inspiration, and that is none other than our sister Shaunta. Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Yes, ma'am. And on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast, we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a conversation with us. The first question that we have for you today is, when did you first join the Vanguard class in Chicago?
I joined the Vanguard class in Chicago in 1998, like the beginning of 1998. Yeah. At that particular time, you had to be a registered member of the mosque for at least a year. And so, of course, the Vanguard had like a open house around the end of 97 because I registered in the beginning of 97. And at the end of 97, they had an open house. I was invited, and I already knew it was something I wanted to do, to be quite honest with you. I was, so impressed by the sisters. It caught my eye right away when I first started attending the meetings on a regular. So I was really honored and excited when I was invited to the open house at the end of 97. And so, yeah, I came into the class at the beginning of 1998.
Excellent. Yes, ma'am. And Brother Daniel E sends the greetings. My sister Naima sends the greetings. Salaam, and then I wanted to ask you, what made you said you already knew that you wanted to join. What was it that made you know that you wanted to join the Vanguard?
I was just always enamored by the sisters. I loved how, they were in my age bracket. They were relatable to me, the sisters that I saw working. They were active. I'm someone who has a background from childhood of being very, very active. A fact that probably only people who know me really well know that I have a background as a ballet dancer. I'm a classically trained ballet dancer from the age of 3. And when I say classical, I'm talking about not just the ballet slippers. I actually danced on point. And, so with that, I really, originally my plans were to be a professional ballet dancer, but ironically, I did suffer some pretty severe injury to my knee as early as the age of like 11. And so I dislocated my knee pretty bad. And pretty much from 11 to 20, my knee would dislocate periodically. And I had gotten so good, I had learned to pop my knee back into place and keep going. This is something very few people know. And so with that, I realized that, dancing on point would, probably be a little bit, that would be pushing it as far as a professional career. So I did continue to dance in my slippers, into my late teens, early 20s. But, the point is, somewhere in high school, I let go of the idea of becoming a professional ballet dancer as far as dancing on point. But with that, just having that background, I was just used to doing stuff. I was used to moving around a lot. I was a gym rat, all of that. And so the sisters in the Vanguard class, appealed to me because I felt like I could relate the most to them. Be active in the mosque.
Beautiful. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Sister Shaunta. And my sister Miriam sends the greetings. Welcome, Salaam, Amy. And then I wanted to ask you about did you ever drill? Because you said ballet, so I was going to correlate that to drill in the 90s.
Yeah, I did drill. I mean, I admit I never actually did Savior's Day. Originally, I was supposed to do Savior's Day. Matter of fact, Sister Mariam, I believe, was going to be our DI.
Okay.
What actually happened was, not to be repetitive, but going back to my knee, as I explained, I had a pretty serious knee injury going all the way back to being about 10 or 11. And ironically, what really ended up happening when I was about 20, my knee dislocated out of the blue. And this ironically happened like shortly before I went into the Vanguard class in 98. I was on post, as a matter of fact, because I was holding post pretty much from the moment I became registered at the beginning of 97. I was on post just about every Sunday. And I had been on post on the hostess post pretty much all day. This particular day, like this was like I said, the late, like towards the end of 97. And it ended up with, when I got home that evening, like, cause my knee was sore. And when I got home that evening, I was actually on the phone with my courtmate at the time, ironically. And I just happened, I'm notorious for being a dancer, doing like an Indian squat kind of, when I sit or whatever. And I hopped into my bed while I was on the phone into this Indian squat. And do you know, my knee dislocated just like that, worse than it ever had. And I screamed, and, my mom overheard me. I was actually still at home, living at home with my mom, going to school or whatever. And even my mother was so used to me dislocating my knee periodically and popping it back into place that she came in, looked at me and was like, "Oh, you'll be all right in the morning." And but in the morning, I was not all right. And my knee really was stuck. And what I did not know was, from years of me popping it back into place, my cartilage was actually out of place. And I ended up having to have a surgery. I actually had to have, like, my knee. I had a doctor, a sports medicine doctor, that actually worked on the Chicago Bulls and, the Bears. Out of Tinley Park. He ended up doing my surgery a couple of months later. Like, I had my surgery like right around the beginning of 1998. And so ironically, I went to the Vanguard boot camp on the heels of that surgery. I was determined to be a Vanguard.
Yes, ma'am. And
when I did my training, I was actually on a brace and everything, because I did have some minor things to overcome as a result of the surgery. And I did all of that pretty much. And that was actually one of the things, I'm so grateful to, to your mom and to the sisters at the time, your mom's sister, Captain Sharifa, Sister Sabora, Sister Abiola, Sister Echo, because I was so inspired that, even though, the situation with my knee, actually, it took a lot out of me at 2021 to have to deal with that. And I know that what would have just totally killed my spirit is, after all of that, if they said, "Oh, you can't participate in the class." And, but they allowed me to come in, anyway, because I was already, I was already in the process of joining prior to all of this happening with my knee. And so in the beginning, they knew I was healing. And so, they were patient with me with certain things in the beginning or whatever. But it's really something, because I to this day, I truly owe a lot to them, in the sense that they really didn't know how that helped, keep my spirit up, to allow me to continue to pursue. This was a goal for me, and they allowed me to continue to pursue it in spite of, because I honestly, I had more going on, a lot of, I didn't really discuss it too much, but I had some minor nerve damage that I had to overcome with my sciatic nerve. And so that's why I had to wear a brace, because my foot, ironically, my outer toes were a little weak. It took me took almost a year from the time of that surgery for me to really get all the strength back on the side that I had the surgery on, pretty much from my knee on, well, really actually, even from me being on crutches, because the doctor ended up having to do a different surgery than he originally thought, because he actually didn't know how injured I actually was, even though they had done an MRI on me. The MRI didn't show everything. And so they actually, so right before they did the surgery, they put cameras in first and took pictures and basically said that I was shredded up. Like I looked like, my cartilage looked like crab legs. It was just totally shredded from years of me popping it, forcing my knee back into place. And the doctor actually said it was medically impossible for me to walk. He couldn't even figure out how I had been able to walk around all that time. Apparently, I had just been walking around this horrible knee for years, just steady tearing it up, and I didn't even know. And so with that, he had to change the whole style of the surgery he was going to do. He thought, and originally I was supposed to walk the very next day. Instead, I was on crutches for a whole month. And so as a result of being on crutches, because ironically, I was in the best shape of my life prior to that surgery. But, you'd be amazed at how when the body stops moving, the way it's accustomed to moving on a regular basis, just those few weeks of me being on crutches, it built up my upper body like crazy, but, my lower body atrophied. And, the side I had the surgery on, because I couldn't put any weight on that side for like 4 weeks, was really weak. And on top of me having some nerve damage just from where they had to go in and to repair the nerve, apparently my sciatic nerve, kind of sort of went to sleep or whatever. And so as a result, like I said, it was that 1998 was one of the toughest years of my life, and it's something that I know most people don't know. I really didn't discuss it, but being in the class, being in the boot camp really kept me together. It gave me hope that everything was going to be okay. And it was in the end. Here I am 20 some odd years later, and, I'm able to do, for the most part, everything I've wanted to do physically. And I know being a part of the class helped me with that.
Beautiful. Yes, ma'am. And thank you everyone who's watching and showing love to Sis Shaunta all around the world. I wanted to ask you about the boot camp. What is this boot camp? I didn't know there was a Vanguard boot camp. What's a boot camp? What's a boot camp? Put us on.
Well, yeah, that's what they called it at the time. I mean, essentially, the whole idea is that we had to arrive at MGT class on Saturdays much earlier than the rest of the general body sisterhood. We worked out together. Sister Clarice was a great mentor, that was trained, by the Grand Master. She, led our workout classes and the martial arts and the security part of our class. If she, wasn't, those few weeks she wasn't available, I remember Sister Hakima would lead our class. I remember there was Sister Echo, Abiola. We would have a good time. We would work out for like a good hour or so and go over our locks and our blocks and all that kind of stuff. And then kind of like personal security training in general. And then from there we would change, basically refresh ourselves, change, put our MGT uniforms on, and then we would go into, like the 7 units as far as MGT class is concerned as well. Because I know that there was a lot of controversy at that time. Oh, the Vanguard, that we didn't necessarily want to be MGT and all this kind of foolishness. And it's like, we had MGT class, in our class, just like the rest of the general body MGT. It's just that ours was separate. But, we still went over all of the 7 units. It's just that we arrived earlier. And so our Saturday class was just entailed more, but we still did all the units and we got tested on everything. I mean, you got tested on your cooking, and sewing skills, all of that.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Shout out to the Vanguard boot camp. All right. And how did you spoke about your mother? How did your family and friends feel, about you being in the nation and being a Vanguard?
Well, interesting enough, I come from a pretty open-minded family. My family's, pretty diverse. in background. I mean, like most Black people, our family originates out of the South, out of Louisiana and Mississippi. But of course, my family migrated, a good portion of my family migrated north about, say, 60 years ago. And in doing so, my ancestors, experienced a lot. My mother's, one of my mother's most beloved brothers actually ended up in the Detroit area and was actually friends with a lot of Malcolm X's younger siblings.
Okay.
So, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother was the local president of the NAACP in Eastern Ohio, near because my maternal grandparents, when they migrated from the South, they ended up in this tiny little town in Eastern Ohio. And that's very close to the Pennsylvania border. And so with that, my grandparents actually were very well known and respected in the area. And my grandmother was, an Eastern Star. She ran the NAACP, she went back, got her GED at 79 and was a class valedictorian, had scholarship in her name. She was always involved. My grandparents were always involved. And so even though our family was definitely had those heavy Christian Southern roots, I think because they had been exposed to, a lot of different schools of thought, I think they were more open-minded and had a respect for, the minister and, and his mission and, and his outlook and Elijah Muhammad and just, the mosque in general. So I didn't get that pushback that a lot of people in my experience, I'm talking to, people that come from a Christian background that end up becoming registered in the mosque. I didn't get that pushback from my family. I was actually raised not eating pork from the beginning. As a child, my parents stopped eating pork before I was even born because they knew it was bad for you. My dad, as a matter of fact, even, had studied quite extensively, had studied the mosque philosophies and stuff like that. So yeah, in general, my family, I didn't get that pushback. And then, I came behind the Million Man March, happened in 95. So, we were fresh, the mosque was fresh out of that. So, and having grown up in Chicago, like I can remember the Salaam when the buildings, was just the shell when it sat there, 79th Street for years. I remember the final call as a little girl, because I was born and raised in Chicago. Born right on the south side of Chicago, over by Chicago State. We lived on King Drive when I was a little girl. And so I can actually remember the final call when it was a funeral home. I can remember as a child driving past it and knowing it was a funeral home. And then I remember one day I was in a car with my mom because we had an aunt that actually lived over by the Salaam and the final call. And so we used to go past there all the time when I was a little girl. And I remember one day seeing that the funeral home said final call. And I was like, Mom, what's the final call? And she was like, huh, what? And I was like, that used to be a funeral home. Now it's the final call. And then we kind of saw the minister, a few times he was interviewed, we saw it on TV. And I was like, oh, that's what the final call is.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's just, it's just funny how my memories are very vivid, just going back to the time I was a little girl, of just, of landmarks and, related to the mosque, and just always kind of having that, I don't know, that culture was always a bit intertwined in my life.
Beautiful. Yes, ma'am. And people are showing you love. And thank you for your honesty and transparency. Brother Audio Nasur says, thank you for sharing, sis. May Allah bless you. And assalamu alaikum salam. Thank you, Brother Audio. Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask you about, you spoke about the Salaam, the final call, and these different things in the businesses and things of that nature. What was that like to come after the Million Man March, as far as the collective, the community everybody being, inspired by the Million Man March and the restaurants and all of that. What was that energy like in the 90s?
It was, it was just infectious. Like, I remember, because 1995 was, I'm dating myself, but I graduated from high school in 1995. And so that summer I went into, because originally I went to Columbia College, the art college downtown.
Okay.
At that time I was still pursuing dance, just not classical ballet any longer, and performing arts. And I can remember some of my friends mentioning when the Million Man March, was, it hadn't happened yet, but I remember my friends saying, hey, October 15th, if you're not going to DC, well, I know, the Million Man March, of course, was for men, but the point is, I just remember overhearing, some of my friends still saying, oh, well, that's a big day, and, keep your eye out. And, the energy was that high that even though I admit I wasn't following that closely, still the energy was just in the streets. It was just so heavy that it was just like, regardless if you remotely had friends that, that had any concept of, beyond, your typical Christian, philosophy or whatever, it's like everybody knew, that, everybody knew it was going to happen in October, on October 15th. And so I remember some of my friends reminding me, hey, regardless, that's a holiday, or unofficial holiday, don't go anywhere, stay at home, for those of us that are not going to the march, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, oh, really? And then of course it happened, and it really was, the spirit was just so beautiful, to see that sea of people, and that sea of Black people and Black men, and just how peaceful it was. It was, the spirit was so strong, it was almost palpable. And that's something that really stood out to me. And I just remember after, that really generated a buzz like no other. And that's when, suddenly the Salaam, building, I can remember people, taking notice. I can remember, saying to my mom, hey, because I remember when they actually mentioned it on the news that it opened, and I was like, Mom, remember that's, we used to drive past there all the time, and I'm just like, hey, that's the same thing. And she was like, oh yeah, you're okay, you're right. And you wanted to be a part, you wanted to help the minister execute that mission. How could you not be touched if you love, your people, and you just want to see, your people rise and live to the fullest, it's just like, how could you not, want to be a part of it? And essentially that's what made me start to come to the meetings on a regular. Because I would say that I started attending the meetings right around the beginning of 96.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And people are showing love all across the country. We have a quick 60-second commercial break for all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast, and we're coming right back to our Sis Shaunta. 1 second. Thank you for every like, share, subscription, and if you all would like to donate, please cash out the People's Podcast. Thank you very much, and shout out to our YouTube family as well. 1 moment.
If you would like to donate or available on Amazon.com. Camera and a drone. He does television and film editing. Please reach out to him if you need any of those services. Sister Miriam's ABC I Love Me, children's book and coloring book, and now Spanish book. All 3 available on Amazon.com. Sister Naima's Stay on Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country, right here in the studios of Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Kenneth's Bow Tie Maker Extraordinaire. He'll ship you bow ties anywhere across the nation. Dr. Henry Carter's King Henry Turkey Legs, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Rashad Muhammad's COVID-19 Disinfected Cleaning Services out of Chicago. Student Minister Sharif Muhammad's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, available on adulsharif.com. And lastly, Brother Joshua Muhammad's book, Cleopatra, as well as No Father, No Excuse, both available on Amazon.
Perfect. And also Sister Sherry, she has Asiatic Minds. She teaches STEM to young kings and queens virtually all across the world. Thank you, everyone who continues to enroll their children into Asiatic Minds. If you want to enroll your child, please go to asiaticminds.com. Thank you very much, Sister Sherry. All right, right back to you, Sister Shaunta. I wanted to ask you about fear. Have you ever been faced with fear? And if so, how have you overcome that fear?
I don't think you really lived if you haven't been faced with fear. I can honestly say probably one of the greatest lectures that helped me was Fear, Faith, and Truth that the minister did. You know, I don't remember exactly when, but I've always been kind of like an audio. I have literally dozens of lectures, audio lectures or whatever the minister has done. Honestly, I think probably the most fearful moment I had in my life. I was actually doing some contract work for like real estate related, insurance and real estate related, because I'm an insurance broker. And sometimes I have done some contract work where it's my job to go in and inspect, do like unannounced inspections of people's homes. And, whether it be a commercial, it might be a commercial property too. But the point is, how people have homeowners insurance or renters insurance or whatever, and people don't realize sometimes that they're doing some really crazy stuff that, make really risky things or whatever that could cause their insurance not to be renewed or something. Anyway, make a long story short, I was inspecting this house and this gigantic pit bull. And honestly, first of all, let me say something. I have nothing against pit bulls. I've actually had 4 pit bulls myself. Okay. Well, 3 pit bulls and 1 American Staffordshire Terrier.
Okay.
So it's not the breed itself that I have a problem with. Okay, let me make that very clear. Honestly, pit bulls are actually my favorite larger breed. Okay. That tells you right there, I'm not really a scary person.
Yes, ma'am.
But this particular incident, this dog was like a cock diesel. He was about a 70 or 80 pound pit. He was a big one, real solid. And apparently, come to find out, that was part of the reason why I got sent out was neighbors were complaining that this dog was just running loose all the time in the neighborhood, like not in a yard, not chained up, nothing. And so sure enough, he was very territorial, but he was just completely loose and he was extremely aggressive. And it actually ended up with, and I had, of course, no idea initially that the dog was an issue. I was really just supposed to check the outside of the perimeters of the house out because it was time to renew their policy. And, but as it turns out, as I got closer to the house, because he was territorial, he immediately, got very aggressive with me. And this was like I said, this is a very large dog. And it reminded me of Fear, Faith, and Truth when the minister talks about, like having a face off like a bull or something like that.
Yes, ma'am.
And, had I been that scary type and just went to that flight instinct and turned my back and took off, I'm sure I probably would have been attacked. And, but, I stayed calm. And, one of the things I know about animals is, how you approach them and handle them has a lot to do with how they respond to you. And so with that, praise be to God, I was not attacked them all that day. I was able to calmly back, like I backed away, but I was facing him and just talking to him very, very calmly and just letting him know, look, I'm not here to, encroach upon your territory. I don't want your house. I don't want, whoever you belong to or whatever. I was just talking to him real calm and backed away. And then that's when neighbors overheard the incident. And I found out all this input that apparently this dog was just terrorizing everybody. And that was part of, there had been all these complaints. So essentially I did have to write up something like, look, because they didn't even have a fence around the house or anything to even, contain a dog. And so I did have to do this write up like, look, if they want to continue on with their homeowners insurance, they're going to have to secure, the property and secure the dog, that sort of thing. I think that's probably my scariest moment.
Okay, well, I'm glad that worked out and the dog didn't attack you. What has been your greatest joyous memory?
Can you repeat that?
What has been your greatest joy in life?
Oh wow, now that's pretty broad. I can definitely say probably one of my most joyful moments, ironically, was when we did the Million Family March.
Okay.
And that's when my training and everything that I had done, since, from that day at the open house with the Vanguard class came full circle, because I was actually, I rotated with the VIP section. And so I was on the outskirts of the stage at the Million Family March. And I can just remember how emotional and just how that is, I can definitely say when it's all said and done, when I transition out of this life, I do believe that we do a replay, in our minds of our highlights, of our lives. And I know that is absolutely one of the greatest high points of my life, to be able to say that I looked out and I saw that sea of people. And for all those people that tried to say, the naysayers that, oh, it wasn't a million people. It's like, no. I was there. People who tried to say that the follow-up was not like the Million Man March. No, I was there. I witnessed it. I was on that stage. I looked out and I saw that sea of people, and I saw the support, from our people, from the janitor to all the way to, celebrities like, Puffy and Russell Simmons. I remember Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown, may God be pleased with her. They were there. Like, I remember all of that. That's a very vivid picture and day of my life. And I can honestly say I didn't see much of DC itself because I was so busy working, but I can truly say that was definitely one of the most joyous moments of my entire life.
Excellent. Yes, ma'am. Okay, we have 2 more questions for you. I wanted to know about your favorite memory with my mother.
Actually, there's 2.
Okay.
I remember when we graduated, our Vanguard graduation, because it was like at the Vanguard retreat, and it was like in Wisconsin at a resort in Wisconsin. And I remember your mom, what I loved about her is she was so open-minded. She was so down to earth, and she had such a respect for art and music. And I shall never forget the song that we marched to for our Vanguard graduation. Like, instead of it being something, real, instead of it being your typical, pomp and circumstance,
Yes, ma'am.
It was Nas, Hate Me Now. She chose that. I just about died when she said that, was because I love Nas. He's actually one of my all-time favorite MCs, but I just thought that was too cool. That was definitely one of my favorite memories of her. And I thought it was the most, even though it was over the top, it was so appropriate.
Yes, ma'am.
I was in my other memory, favorite, my other memory that was like probably one of my most favorites. I remember we used to have these drills periodically in Vanguard class, these kind of what if scenarios. And I remember what a great actress and makeup artist your mom was, in the sense that, and just a creative, how she would orchestrate these drills to kind of train us and to just really see if we're put into a situation that's very stressful, how we would use the tools that she had, that she was trying to instill in us and all of the leadership in the class. And so I remember one time she actually did do this makeshift. It was like somebody had like abducted her and just kind of left her, on the property. And I remember she just did this heck of a makeup job where like it looked like she had been beat up. It was impressive. Like you really had to like, it's like, yeah, for a few moments there, you really thought this had actually happened.
Mm.
And I'll throw in one more. I also remember her telling us about how Brother Gaddafi had blessed her to spend some time training with, he had soldiers, he had female soldiers.
Yes, ma'am.
And I distinctly remember her talking about how, she was like, if I had you all doing what they do in a day, she was like, all of you all run out of here. Like, and when she was telling us just about how extensive their training was and how long their days were, that's definitely one of my favorite memories. Just, she could tell a story. I do. She was very good at that.
Beautiful. Yes, ma'am. And what type of music, or since you said you like Nas, well, let's go with this particular album. What's your favorite album of all time?
That's a good question. That's a very good question, because I love music. Having a dance background. And I have a very eclectic ear.
Okay.
I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to music. I listen to virtually everything, probably except for country music.
Okay.
I even got some heavy metal in my repertoire. So,
okay.
That's a good one. You know what? I guess I'd have to go with my all-time favorite band, which is Jamiroquai. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Okay.
A European band, ironically. Actually, I would say Traveling Without Moving is my favorite. That would be my all-time favorite, because it's from the 90s. That's the song. I don't know if you're familiar with Virtual Insanity. It was a hit. The point is they've had a lot of hits, but not as many in America. Much bigger overseas. But that is actually my favorite album of all time. I would definitely say.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's a little different.
That's good. That's good. I mean, that's the first you putting this on. Okay, I'm glad to know. So Jamiroquai, and what's the name of the album?
Traveling Without Moving.
Traveling Without Moving. Okay, we got it like that.
And I think it has such a deep meaning. Traveling without moving.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, and one last question for you. First of all, on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast, we want to thank you for all your sacrifices and everything that you've done to contribute to the nation and to our people. And thank your family as well for their putting in work. We didn't get your parents' names.
Oh, my mother is Annie Pearl Chase Veal, and my father is Albert Veal. Albert Veal Jr.
Excellent. And what would you like your legacy to be, Sis Shaunta?
Ooh, that's a deep one. First and foremost, what I truly thrive on is helping people. That is absolutely the first thing I want to be remembered for. I really strive to help people. I am an insurance broker. that's definitely something that in general, for me, with as far as business is concerned, I mean, obviously at the end of the day, we're all in business to, turn over a profit and make money. But the bigger thing for me is, have I helped you? I could care less about putting money in my pocket if it hasn't helped you. I try to create win-win situations. I'm also, I'm an entrepreneur on a few different levels. I actually do. I have a business partner, and we're actually doing a build out on a salon/spa out in Northwest Indiana. I actually have my hand in a few different pots, so to speak. But everything I do, I try to make sure that I'm truly helping people. I always strive to make sure that it's not just about me. It's about creating a win-win situation. And so, like, even with what we do with our business, with our spa/salon, we strive to utilize procedures that are non-invasive, procedures that, understanding that as women, we all want to look good. But the point is what we're doing to look good really good for us? There's so many people out here, doing these BBLs and, all these different procedures. But the reality of it is, these are toxic procedures. These procedures are taking, you might look good for a few years or, even a few hours, but in the long run, you're really killing yourself slowly. We strive to make a point to stay away from things like that. And we try to focus more on natural procedures and nutrition and fitness and, really doing things that are, yes, you're going to look better, but the point is, this is actually good for you as well. And so that, I would say, first and foremost, that's absolutely what I want my legacy to be about, helping people, whether it be spiritually, financially, looking better, feeling better, whatever, their goal is. I want to help them achieve that, and create that win-win situation.
Excellent. Yes, ma'am. What a legacy to have. Do you promote, do you have a website or something that we can help everybody support your insurance company? Do you want to, how can if people want to sign up, where do they go?
Actually, you know what? Right now, I actually am in the process of, I'm actually making some changes right now. Okay. But I will definitely give you that information. I certainly will provide that information in the future, but I'm currently doing some rehabs right now with my website as far as my insurance business.
Yes, ma'am. Well, this has been great. Can't wait to put this on YouTube. And man, this has been phenomenal. Thank you for the memories and the history. And may Allah continue to bless you and your family. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off of the People's Podcast. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you.
Thank you.